Ben is free, and I think he has quite a bit to say about what happened, what transpired, and we had a short catch up with what happened in your stay, and you were transferred to several facilities as well. Sounds like hell, man. You seriously been through some fucking shit with all that crazy things in the court, and okay, I'm not sure what we should even go through today because it's definitely a lot to talk about. But I just follow your lead and see how things go. So how are things?
Yeah, hi Stan. Hi Stan. Yeah, good to speak to you. I'm back in the UK now. I'm staying with a friend in Dorset. I arrived back early on Saturday and just having a few days. My friend's a racehorse trainer. He's got a nice place, so I've just been getting back into the swing and riding a few of his racehorses out, and yeah, just trying to sort of readjust to life, having had a fairly insular 35 days in a cell. I just needed a week or so just to sort of readjust to life. But yeah, much happier now. I'm back in England, and all is good. Thank you.
You've gotten quite a bit of hate, and yet by the same token, some fans, so to speak, in Singapore, and we have some satire websites writing about you. So what exactly happened, man? Like, can you just walk us through what happened?
Yeah, I'll probably just give you a quick sort of run through what happened from my second arrest onwards. So, yeah, after my first court appearance early July, my case was adjourned to the 23rd of July, which was a Friday. So I was staying in a hotel in Katong area, and everything was fairly normal up until Monday morning before my trial on the Friday. So I was sitting in my hotel room, putting on my socks, just about to go for a run into East Coast Park, when the door suddenly opened in my hotel room, and two of the police who I know very well, one is my previous kidnapper, Alvin, and also the IO Norden, who's been the guy that I've been sort of speaking to, burst through my door with three other of their colleagues behind them. So 5 police just came storming into my hotel room, shouting, "You're under arrest." So I sort of ran into the bathroom, shut the door, told them that I was on the toilet. I need the toilet. And I was getting my phone out to record it so that I could have a video of their arrest so that people would be able to see what these guys are like. So yeah, to cut a long story short, I told them I don't consent, but they told me I was under arrest for not wearing a mask again for when I went to court. And then they forcibly thrust me onto the bed, head down, face down onto the bed, handcuffed me behind my back, wouldn't let me get changed, wouldn't let me do anything, just dragged me out of the hotel, put me in a car, and off I went back to to Cantonment Police Station, where I'd already spent 28 hours. And my thoughts were, my court date's on Friday, there's nothing they can do, they're probably going to drop the case. The only thing that they can do is have a last sting in the tail, and they're just going to put me in a prison cell or a jail cell for 48 hours. So I was ready for that. But what they actually did after a few hours was send me into court on Zoom. And then the lady judge who I'd seen before in person, she read out my charges, which were not wearing a mask, public nuisance, and offensive words to a police officer, I think. And then there was the 4th charge, which was again not wearing a mask, so the same as the previous charge. And I asked her on the Zoom call what law says I must wear a mask, and she ignored me twice. And when I asked her the 3rd and final time, she said, "Case adjourned. Your bail is cancelled, and you're off to you'll be inside till Friday." So yeah, that was kind of what happened. And then it turned out that I wasn't going to spend the 5 days in the police cells, but they actually sent me to Changi prison. So I went there on Monday evening, quite late, and was there for 5 days until my case on the Friday. But then my case on the Friday, they asked me how I plea. I said, I'm not making a plea. And then they extended it from 5 days to 18 days. After 18 days, I went back to court, which was my 4th time in court. Wasn't allowed to speak as all the previous times. And they sent me to IMH, and I spent 2 weeks in IMH. And then my 5th time in court, I was able to eventually actually speak, and that's the final court case when I got 6 weeks prison and was sent back to Changi for one night, and then I did 2 nights in the ICA, the Immigration and Checkpoint Authority, and then I got back to England on Saturday morning. So yeah, that's a quick overview.
Okay, yeah, by the way, again, have to preface all of this because you still have to say that none of these, anything mentioned here in the video or parts of the video should be construed, misconstrued, or assumed to be legal advice or medical advice. None of these will be advice, but just for entertainment purposes only. So don't take any of these as advice or assume to be. All this is just, again, for entertainment purposes only. Okay, so I'm just very glad that you're out. And okay, so they roughly, I mean, in a way, they kind of did play by the rules because it's strictly by the third time you ask them to produce proof that there's isolation of the virus, the so-called virus and strain. They could not do it. The third time they just defaulted basically and they adjourned the court.
No, I didn't ask about viruses. I said, what law says that I must cover my face with a mask? Because it's not a law. This is what everyone keeps getting mixed up with. It's a regulation. It's not a law. So when I asked her that, silence. I asked her twice, silence. And in court, once, if somebody ignores you or doesn't respond 3 times, then you're able to answer the question for them. And I was just about to do that when she cut me off, said court adjourned, bail cancelled, and cut me off from the Zoom call. So yeah, that's what happened. I wasn't talking about isolation of viruses. I was just, my defense was purely on the law and the definition of a criminal action versus a non-criminal action, civil law versus criminal law, and obviously common law versus maritime law. I never once denied that it was me in any of the videos. I never once denied that I was not, that I was wearing I was never trying to say that I was wearing a mask. My pure defense was based on the law, but the police never understood what I was talking about, and I don't really think the judge did. They just kept trying to sort of say to me, look, this is you in the video. Obviously, you're not wearing a mask, you're guilty, but there was just total disregard for anything involving common law.
Yeah, it's my mistake. I apologize. It wasn't about the isolation, but the mask itself. And it's not about the mask, in fact, that you challenge. It's about you're going straight to the person and the man or woman. So it seems like the court is working as it should. The system is working, but it's just that it's I guess, hijacked in a way, or it's just the morality of it is not in the right place. Would you say that that's the case?
I wouldn't say the system's working as it should, because there was no recognition of the fact that it was the law versus a maritime regulation. There's a massive difference. So yeah, I think if I asked the judge in court, this is the final time, I said, Your Honor, do you recognize that I'm a living man? And he said to me, of course I do. It's obvious that you're a living man, or I don't know if he said person or man, I'm not sure, but still, he said that. But then when he delivered his verdict, there was no recognition of that whatsoever. So if I'm not a living man, what am I? I'm a legal fiction. So that's probably the most frightening thing, that the state court and the judge does not recognize the unalienable God-given rights that a living man has, because they don't acknowledge that whatsoever. So that's probably the thing that I would take out of the whole court case, was the fact that every time I tried to bring up issues like jurisdiction and living man and unalienable rights, he kept shutting me down and saying, you can't talk about that now, you can talk about that later. My whole defense was based on that, and every time I tried to bring it up, he just told me I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So yeah, the people who, there was a lady who I saw who did a article on Yahoo, which I thought was very fair and detailed and accurate, and she was obviously in court the full day, because everything that I said, she really stated that in her article. So the people who were in court all day got a good feel for where my defense was, but it was just completely ignored when the judge gave his verdict.
Wow. Okay, let's go into detail. Let's go into more detail of what really happened in the court during session. Okay, it seems like, is it an ignorance thing? Is it that they're not properly educated, or they just don't know, or they're just trying to not mention something in public courts? Like, what do you think is going on over there?
The police have no idea. They're just order followers, and they do not understand the law. They don't know the difference between common law and maritime law of the land, law of the sea. So for the police, I think it's definitely just lack of education, and they have no idea. For the judge, I'm pretty sure that he does understand it all. But I think that he has people in the background who are saying what to do, and he's not really got any power. The reason I say that is that my case was all finished. So the prosecution goes first, then I go in the afternoon, and then there's a wrap up. And then based on what's been said on both sides, you can kind of have a final discussion. And then that happened at 5 o'clock, so 5 p.m. And the judge said, right, I need to reconvene to make my decision. I will be back at 5:15. So he taps, everyone stands up, apart from me because I'm handcuffed to the chair. And then he left. So everyone's just sitting in the court, and 5:15 comes, the court's getting fuller and fuller in the viewing gallery because all the other cases are finished and all the other journalists and stuff are coming into my court. 5:30 comes, the judge is still not there. It got to 5:40 and I was like, this is ridiculous. This guy's been gone, obviously, to talk to his bosses or whoever he's talking to for 40 minutes, saying he was going to be 15 minutes. And so I've got a microphone. So I got on the microphone and I said, the captain has abandoned his ship. I am a free man. Officers, please uncuff me. So I turned around like that to ask them to uncuff me so I could leave because the guys disappeared. Obviously, they just looked at me like I was an alien. There was a few laughs. And then he came back in at 5:44. So 44 minutes from saying he was going to make a decision, he disappeared to talk to people, came back in at 5:44. And his demeanor had completely changed. He was stressed. He didn't look comfortable. The words that he was saying, I got the impression he didn't really want to say them. And he was stuttering and stammering. I'd love to get it on video. I don't know if there's any possibility or not. But yeah, he basically said, you're guilty of all 4 charges without any reasonable doubt or beyond reasonable doubt. And then started saying that I was misguided. I'd been given poor advice. And I was like, okay. So yeah, that's what I mean. The judge seemed like a nice guy, and I just feel like his hands were tied and he was having to follow orders from whoever he's speaking to for 40 minutes before he delivered his verdict.
So it sounds like these guys are still beholden to a higher power, so to speak, right?
100%.
Maybe he just went to get a nice steak in between or something.
I mean, he was a different guy. So up until that, he never put a word wrong. He was very measured and calm, composed. Cautioned me several times because I kept trying to say things and I wasn't allowed to talk in the morning. But he was in control 100%. And then after this 44-minute gap, when he disappeared, I feel like he could have been saying to these guys, look, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. He studied the law. Well, we can't just go ahead and just ignore what he's saying. But there was a lot riding on it. And I think he was possibly overridden a little bit. But when
what are the 4 charges again?
Okay, so the first 3 were not wearing a mask, public nuisance.
Let me just wait. Let me just type it out. Thank God I have a microphone stand so I can.
Yes. So the first 3 charges, which was from the Facebook video that we watched for hours in court on the big screen in the morning, it was painful. Not wearing a mask, public nuisance, and threatening words to a police officer and resisting arrest. I think that was all 1 charge. So the threatening officers, these guys came to my house at midnight on a Saturday night. I was in bed. They both did statements in the court and they both were fair and honest. And they said that I was friendly, I was cooperative, and I was happy to talk to them, which I was. It was only when they insisted that I left my family and went to the police station to do a statement which I knew was an arrest, that I became agitated. They both said increasingly agitated. And obviously that's when the problems happened. They both admitted that I was struck with a baton on my thigh, and they said that I did a boxing stance. Now, if someone's hitting you with a baton, you go like that to defend yourself, don't you? Of course you do. So I said that my boxing stance was a protective stance, which is what a boxing stance is basically, to protect myself from being hit with a police baton. And they both had no issues with that. And as for saying that I was going to drop them, I said, can I see the video evidence of this? Because that does not sound like something I would ever say. And I can't remember saying that. There was no recording. They were both plainclothes officers. Nothing was recorded. It was just my word against theirs. And the whole charge was an absolute joke. And that came out in court. But apparently I was guilty beyond reasonable doubt of this, even though there was no evidence. And then the second charge, which was being a public nuisance, that was based on a lady on the Facebook video with me on the MRT. When I sat down, the lady next to me stood up to get off the train, or to leave her seat. I said she might have been getting off the train, but that's what the public nuisance charge was. No one knows who this lady is. She wasn't in court. She never made a complaint, but the public nuisance was because a lady moved off the chair next to me when I sat down, and that's 2 weeks in prison. I got sent for that. And obviously not wearing a mask boils down to the regulation jurisdiction. So the fourth charge, which was not wearing a mask when I went to court, is the same charge, but because it was the second charge, they doubled it. So I got 4 weeks in prison for walking between the taxi, which dropped me off at state court, to state court, not wearing a mask. So yeah, he added 4 and 2 and came to 6. And then the other 2 charges he added together and they ran concurrently. So I got 6 weeks. But I knew from their previous plea bargains, they'd offered me 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and 5 weeks if I pleaded guilty. They told me that if I accept the guilty plea, I only serve 2/3. So I knew when he gave me 6 weeks, I only had to do 4. I'd already done 33 days plus the 2 days in prison at that point. So I knew that I didn't have much time, if any, to go after the court was finished. So yeah, that's basically what happened with court.
So you did not plead guilty, you didn't even plead at all. So
no, they found me
basically
guilty.
they can't do anything to you. And
well, they can just stick these charges on my straw man, which is what they did. But I mean, there was no evidence of me saying threatening words. The evidence that I was a public nuisance was a random lady that nobody knows standing up off her seat. And obviously the mass charges, I've been debating the fact that they don't apply to me as the living man, and that they've got no jurisdiction under the law over me. And there's no crime. For there to be a criminal activity, there must be loss, damage, or harm. And there's nobody who's suffered any loss, damage, or harm. So this is civil regulation breach at worst, but they've put me in criminal court. They've condemned me before trial. I'd already done 33 days in prison and IMH before I even got to speak. So yeah, unfortunately, the whole judicial and justice system in Singapore is very, I believe, unfair, and there's no, you are innocent until you've been found guilty. I'd already been punished, tortured psychologically and physically before I'd even got to speak in court. And that's very, very worrying for the people of Singapore, in my opinion.
What was the most difficult part of all the custodial stays over there? Which part was the worst? Which one you barely scraped through? Like how's the experience over there?
The first 28 hours was horrendous because I was really tired. If you ever get kidnapped, arrested by the police, the worst time for them to get you is just as you're going to bed, because you're tired because you're just about to go to sleep. So they got me late on Saturday night and they kept me until Monday morning. So the first time when I was in for 28 hours with no sleep since Friday was horrific. When they got me the second time, I thought, well, at least they got me at 9 o'clock in the morning when they got me out of my hotel. I'm not going to be tired because I've just woke up a few hours ago. So I was actually okay for the second time in the police cells. But when they sent me to Changi prison, I was actually relieved because in the police cells, it's light 24/7 and it's very noisy and there's nothing to sleep on. You're just walking around on the concrete. And I thought, at least in prison, it's going to be dark at night so I can sleep. And I'll probably get a mat to sleep on, like I don't know, I imagined like a gymnastics mat or possibly even some sort of kind of bedding. So when I got to prison and it was just a bamboo mat on the concrete and there was just a thin blanket, I was a bit disappointed in that. But to be fair, 18 days in Changi was okay because I was allowed to read the Bible. They gave me a proper version of the Bible, and I just read that twice. The really dark bit was IMH because I was in the isolation ward because I refused to do any of the swab tests. And I was in there with the really poorly people who've got mental problems. So it's very noisy, and the noises that you hear in a place like that are not good. And I wasn't allowed to read. So 2 weeks of just staring at a wall and unable to read anything. That was definitely the hardest. So I would say IMH, even though I did get not a bed, but I got a mattress to sleep on. The sleeping arrangements were okay, but I could only sleep for 3 or 4 hours. But the rest of the time, 20 hours a day, just staring at a wall for 2 weeks that was the hardest, I think.
What the hell would anyone do 2 weeks by themselves with nothing in a room with a cell? I mean, how does anyone even cope with any? I mean, okay, if you are sane,
on day
right?
2, I was unsure.
All of us are sane. I'm gonna assume that. So a sane person in a place like that, I mean, what do you even do to get by? Do you even feel like you were gonna get out or something like that? No.
I mean, yeah, it was tough. It was tough. That was the most torturous bit. So
What got you
in
through?
Changi prison, the worst part is the sleeping because it's so uncomfy that you can't sleep for more than like half an hour because you get pins and needles and your back hurts, your hips hurt, your knees hurt because you're just sleeping on concrete basically. But I only sleep for 3 or 4 hours, so I would get like maybe 3 or 4 separate little sleeps of 45 minutes an hour. But at least when I was awake, I could talk to people because there was people either side of me, and we can shout out the back to have a chat. But in IMH, even though I could have a comfy bed, just the days just drag and drag and drag and drag, and there's nobody to talk to. So yeah, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And it was without them like electrocuting me or sticking pins in me, it was as close to torture, I would say. It's definitely psychological torture. And yeah, I was just like, I wasn't sure how I was going to get through it and what I would be like at the end of the 2 weeks. But it's amazing how the human body and the mind sort of is able to adapt to stuff
What were you
and
thinking
survive.
about?
My kids, you just think about your kids the whole time. So yeah, it upsets you when you think about your kids. So that was the hardest thing. But what I kind of thought to get through it was that for some reason, I don't believe in coincidences. And for some reason, I've been set this spiritual challenge by my creator and I've got to get through it. So yeah, just not feeling too sorry for yourself and thinking for some reason this is going to benefit me or benefit humanity. And worse things do happen to people, and you've just got to sort of think like that to get through it.
Speaking about spirituality, you told me that you managed to read from cover to cover the Bible twice. So instead of seeing it as a religious book, we both know that it's a book on law, on commerce, on business, and conducting yourself honorably. What have you gleaned from reading it twice?
Yeah, I would say that obviously I'm no expert on exactly what the Bible's all about, but there's a lot of law in there. You can see where laws, especially common law, sort of comes from the Bible. And I think it's probably like a bit more of a guidebook on how to become enslaved. So how to go from being in the jurisdiction of law of the sea onto law of the land. So I don't want to go into this too much, but for example, Jesus walks on water. Does he really, or is it telling you that you've got to get out of the law of the sea, the law of the water, and get onto the law of the land? There's a lot of deeper meanings in it, and many different sort of layers to it. But yeah, it's nice to read through it twice. And I thought Job is my favorite book in the Bible. But yeah, some of the Old Testament I find is a bit boring. But Job and the New Testament is a bit more interesting.
I see. I've pretty much asked what I feel it's pressing, and for the people who support you are cheering on for you in Singapore, I want to hear, is there anything that you feel should be covered? It's not being mentioned because there are many articles about you over here. So what do you think is important to say?
I just probably want to say thank you to all of the prison staff and the the staff at IMH. So the prison staff were all really nice to me. And the staff at IMH were really nice, the doctors, the psychologists. And I tried to use it as a bit of a platform to me to be able to educate these guys as well. So some of them aren't interested, but some of them are, especially the panel that was interviewing me with for the psychiatric assessments. I think I had 3 one-hour sessions with them, and they were quite interested in what I was telling them about the law and all this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, everyone was nice to me. I wasn't mistreated in any way by the people who were there. So just want to say that. And just in terms of Singapore, I mean, everyone thinks of Singapore as a very safe country, and it is in terms of you're not going to get attacked by Singaporean people. But how can you say that a country or a state is a safe place to live when the police don't have any regard for the law or your human rights, and they will basically kidnap you and abduct you? I got kidnapped from my own house in front of my partner and my kids and my helper, and then they did it to me exactly the same the second time out of my hotel room, where I don't consent and I'm not a criminal and I'm not accused of any criminal charges. So yeah, I think the danger for people in Singapore is obviously not from the population, but from the state, and that is the police and the courts. And that's just something to think about. And hopefully I've just been able to plant a few seeds in terms of people realizing who they are. Are they a legal fiction, or are they a living man or a living woman? And just to look into the birth certificate issue, because this is how for hundreds and hundreds of years we have been controlled, and people would say enslaved. And I just want to get that message out, that when you're born, when your parents register your birth with a birth certificate, the state changes your name, and you go from being a living man or a living woman with God-given unalienable rights to a legal fiction with your surname in capitals, and you become property of the state, and they grant you privileges. Do people want to be property of the state granted privileges, or do they want to be living men, living women who are free under God's laws? And that's what people have to decide and have to look into. So that's probably the main thing that I want to say, is people need to look into the birth certificate deception, because it's in England, a lot of people are waking up to it, and it's the same in America, Australia, Europe, but probably in Singapore, maybe this hasn't really been something that people have thought about. So yeah, look into the birth certificate fraud, the birth certificate deception, the Justinian deception. It's all Rothschilds that are behind all this. So yeah, have a look into that and see what you think.
How do you feel you have changed after this harrowing experience, this very uncomfortable experience?
I lost a lot of weight. So I normally weigh about 85, 86 kg, and I was 72 when they weighed me when I went into IMH. So anyone out there who wants to go on a lose weight quick diet, this is one good way to do it. Don't wear a mask on the MRT. But yeah, I don't know. I feel fine now, but it was quite a brutal experience, especially in IMH. But I don't regret a thing. I was standing up for my God-given unalienable rights and my children's God-given unalienable rights. I never wore a mask anytime in Singapore, except for to get on a bus or to get into a shopping center or in a supermarket. The rest of the time, I didn't ever wear a mask, and I don't regret anything. It's just, unfortunately, it put me and my family, my partner, my mum, my dad, my sister, my kids, obviously, it's put everyone through a fairly horrible 3 months, especially the last sort of 5 weeks. But I would do it all again, because I was standing up for what I believed in.
I think we can put some things into perspective with where you're at right now, because you told me after you left the airport and got to the cab, right, and then you went to several villages, you have seen nobody wearing a mask ever.
So
you would compare to Singapore.
Yeah, I landed in Heathrow, got my bags, and went out into the public space. And I would say the only people wearing masks were the people working in the airport, and they just had like a blue mask on, compared to 3 masks in Changi. So in Changi, it was like there'd been a chemical attack, N95 or Honeywell big white mask, UVEX safety goggles, like a chemistry experiment, and then a face shield across the front, and big blue. The people in the airport were wearing blue cagoules. It was like there'd been a chemical attack, and the police who escorted me had the same on their face, so mask, goggles, face shield, and a yellow cagoule they were wearing. In Heathrow, it was just the staff had to wear a normal mask. And in terms of the public, it was about 50-50 who had a mask and who didn't. Once I went to hire a car, in the car hire place, none of the guys working in there were wearing masks. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I've been out and about now for like 6 days. And I went to the supermarket the other day, 100 people in the supermarket, only 2 or 3 wearing a mask. So yeah, I think in England, everyone's just got sick of it and ignores it. So it's
things are changing over there.
Different world. Yeah, I watched the sport on the TV. No one's wearing a mask. Watch the horse racing on the TV. Nobody's wearing a mask. So yeah, I think in England we've just kind of everything's just like normal, which is good.
And how about protests and marches?
I'm catching up. I've got so much. Like the first Saturday, Sunday I was here, I was just catching up with my friends. I didn't even log on to my laptop. But and I've been riding horses the last 3-4 mornings, so it's only been like an hour or 2 in the afternoon, and when I go to bed that I have a quick catch up. But I'm literally just catching up on everything. But I think Australia seems like the place where most of the protests are happening at the moment. There's some brutal stuff happening in the parks and stuff in Sydney and Melbourne. So looks like the really tyrannical stuff is Australia, and possibly in Auckland in New Zealand. I'm not too sure yet what's going on with the protests and stuff here. Before I got arrested the second time, there was a lot happening in Europe, France especially, and England. There was protests every weekend, but I'm not sure what's happening now because I'm catching up and I'm about 5 or 6 weeks behind.
Okay, this is very important because whatever you just said, right, an experience on the ground with your own eyes is completely different, and nothing has been said on the mainstream, especially in Singapore. It sounds like 2 different worlds. So someone is lying. Someone's not.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to London and I've been to Bournemouth, and I'm down on the south coast here. It's pretty rural here. But this weekend I'm going back over to see a friend in London, and then I think we're going down to Cornwall, which is quite a busy area. So I'll be able to let you know once I go into more sort of towns and cities. But yeah, from what I've seen, probably about less than 5% of people are wearing a mask here, and I think everyone's a bit sick of it now. And the politicians here don't have the power that they have in Singapore. So I think everybody realizes that the Boris is a bit of a puppet muppet. Nobody particularly respects the politicians here and what they say. Yeah, it's very different to Singapore, where the government's sending out daily messages to say how many people have got COVID and how many are on ICU and all this nonsense, whereas in the UK there's none of that. So yeah, I think people here are not under the spell of the government like what they are in Singapore.
You know, one of the biggest hurdles I had to go through was thinking that I was alone in all of this last time. The very first time I interviewed David Icke, the point of it was to get, it's almost like a beacon for someone else of like mind who's looking to all this, right, to lean on and see that if there are some of us out there who are really concerned with what's really going on, yet we see none of it that's been said on the news media that we rely so much on. Not so much of us, I mean, in alternative side. It's so different. It's almost as if the media is not saying what should be said. And I think a great message for all Singaporeans would be that to at least really look into it and stick to your guns and do what you really feel is right.
Yeah, I just don't listen to the media at all is what I would say. I do not check any mainstream media, and even half of three-quarters of the alternative media is also controlled as well. So yeah, anything that you see on the BBC, Guardian, Telegraph, New York Times, Straits Times, it's all just total nonsense and propaganda. So
It's like
yeah,
Singapore's
the
in a
best.
bubble now or something. It's in a news bubble.
I think I said that on my penultimate court case. He accused me of being a conspiracy theorist, and I said, just because I don't get all of my information from the Straits Times, you think I'm a conspiracy theorist? And I saw that had been quoted in one of the articles. But yeah, I mean, in Singapore, I would say 95% of people just get their information from probably mothership Straits Times, China South News or whatever it's called. This is just complete propaganda. It's like my mum and dad will get all of their information from the Daily Mail and the BBC, so, and they're just kind of brainwashed, as I was up until a year or so ago. But yeah, once you start realizing that this is just propaganda and lies that they feed you with, and it's a very small number of corporations that control the whole mainstream media. I think like 6 companies control everything. Yeah, the best way to get information, I think, is to find people. I follow people on Twitter who put interesting stuff up. And then Telegram is really good as well for following people who are independent. But yeah, anything that's mainstream is definitely almost 100% lies.
That was a very good message to send. And as I think we can just end it here. And okay, do you have any parting messages, last messages for people in Singapore and those around the world who doubt the sanity, who doubt the news, or any message for anyone?
No, not really. If anyone wants to contact me, I'll put my Proton Mail at the bottom. I've had loads and loads and loads of emails from journalists and from people when I was inside, and I've not got around to catching up with those. I'll do that this weekend. So obviously the fact that I think the only place I put my email was on the bottom of our last video, which the views keep going down, by the way. I think it's less than 2,000 views now.
What the hell?
That video has had, every time I look, it's lost another load of views. But I'll put my email at the bottom of this. So if anyone wants to contact me, that would be, I'm happy to have a chat with people and stuff. But yeah, the fight will continue. I need to get back to normal life, and I can't be dedicating so much of my time to all of this stuff now because I've got kids and a family and stuff to support. But obviously I'll still be fairly active and keep an eye on what's going on. But yeah, thank you for my support. I've had so much support. I've had loads of nice messages. I've had people offering me all sorts of stuff, crypto and money and things like that. And I've said no to everything. And yeah, just wanted to say thank you to everyone who supported me. And yeah, there's 1 or 2 articles I'm going to be putting out this weekend through a few journalists who I trust. So there'll be a couple of things, and I've written a statement as well. So yeah, this weekend, hopefully my last stuff will go out, my side of the story, and then hopefully you won't hear my name or see my face in any more news articles after that.
Oh, shit, man! I thought that won't be the last of you that we'll see. I'm hoping to hear more from you, and probably keep on a good fight or something. But
yeah, cool, Stan. Good luck, and I'm sure we'll speak at some point in the next few weeks.
Definitely, man. Okay, thank you, Ben.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
All right, stop recording.
Is that okay? How long was that?